Alrighty, this is the Psychology 124 Test 1, and I think I've got 3 pages here. Some of this stuff is repeat, and so we'll go through here and see what we come up with. Human development. These just lots and lots of definitions here. Not a whole lot of theory, just definitions. Human development, science that seeks to understand how and why all kinds of people change over time, how and why they remain the same, and also to focus on all types of people, various ages, socioeconomic groups, gender, ethnicity, sexuality, background, culture, and nationality. Critical period. Some of these are going to be a little bit out of order, but hopefully they'll make sense. Critical period is a time when a particular type of developmental growth must happen if it is ever going to happen, such as prenatal development. Thalidomide prescribed for nausea between in the 1957s to 1961. If the woman ingested between days 28 and 54, the limbs of her newborn were malformed or absent. So that's that critical period. It was between days 28 and 54. That's just one example. Sensitive period is a time when a certain type of development is most likely to happen, though it may still happen later, such as language development. Lifespan. There are 5 characteristics change from conception to death. 5 characteristics that they talk about in the lifespan. Multidirectional. That's non-linear progression. It's not always linear, as a growth chart indicates. Physical health, intellectual growth, social interaction can be up, down, stable, or erratic. So multidirectional. It's also multi-contextual. There's just a number of different concepts that gives us our characteristics. Multicultural, many different cultural settings. Multidisciplinary, many different academic disciplines contribute to the data that we take in. And plasticity, the capacity to change through the lifespan. Plasticity. Cohort. Definition, a group of people who share the same birth year or decade would be a cohort. Social construction, an idea that is built on shared perceptions. An idea that is built more on shared perceptions than on objective reality. Spell check didn't catch that. So social construction, an idea that is built more on shared perceptions than on objective reality. The butterfly effect, the idea that a small action or event may set off a series of changes culminating in a major event. The scientific method, a general way to seek evidence to answer questions involving 4 basic steps. Sometimes there's a 5th step as well. So the scientific method, you're going to formulate your research question. What are you trying to answer? Develop a hypothesis, which is a specific prediction that is stated in such a way that it can be tested and either confirmed or refuted. Then you're going to test your hypothesis. You're going to draw conclusions. Then finally, you're going to make those findings available. Replication, you have to be the repetition of a scientific study using the same procedures on another group of participants to verify or refute the original study's conclusion. Dependent variables, the specific behavior being studied. Outcome variables, you're going to have outcome variables. An independent variable, the imposed treatment or special condition. That's the manipulated variables. So remember, the independent variable, that's the one that you're going to manipulate. That's the imposed treatment or special condition. That's the independent variable. Experimental group. Participants who are given particular treatment. They fall in the experimental group. They're given a particular treatment. The comparison or control group are participants who are not given special treatment, but they're similar to the experimental group in other relevant ways. Repeat that again. The experimental group, those are the ones who are given particular treatment. The comparison or the control group, they're not given a special treatment, but they're similar to the experimental group in other relevant ways. Correlation. You cannot determine cause and effect with correlation, or correlation exists between two variables if one variable is more or less likely to occur when the other occurs. Positive correlation, an example would be increased height. You're going to have, oh boy, did I mess that up. I've got down increased height equals increased grades. That should mean increased height equals increased weight. Increased temperature outside, there's going to be increased domestic violence. That has been proven. A negative correlation would be increased television watching results in decreased grades. That would be a negative correlation. A survey. Info is collected from personal interview, questionnaires, etc. The limitation is subjects are not always truthful or good judges of their own behavior. The advantage is you can glean a lot of info from many subjects in a short period of time. Boy, did I spell bad. Case study. Intensive. I put down you can bean a lot. You can gain a lot of info from many subjects in a short period of time. A case study, that's an intensive study of one individual or situation. The positive aspects of a case study is you get a detailed account from multiple sources, but the negative is you only get one subject. Studying changes over time. There's three basic designs: cross-sectional, longitudinal, and cross-sequential. Again, we're studying changes over time. The cross-sectional, that's a research that studies groups differing in age, but they share other important characteristics, so that's cross-sectional. Longitudinal research studies individuals over a long period of time, but it's hard to track these people as the sample dwindles as time goes by. Finally, the cross-sequential, that's the best design. There's more cost associated with this type of study. This takes into account time and cultural aspects. This chair is squeaking something terribly. Scientific observation, a method of testing a hypothesis by unobtrusively watching and recording participants' behavior in a systematic and objective manner. This can be done in a natural setting, in a laboratory, or in searches of archival data. So you can actually go back and just search the data for scientific observation. Nature, nurture, controversy. Nature, heredity, genetic influences, inherited from parents at the moment of conception. Nurture, that's the environment, every influence that is not genetic, from conception to death. The nurture, conception to death. Psychoanalytic theory interprets human development in terms of unconscious motives and drives. Every time I'm moving over like this, I've screwed up something the way I spelled it. Unconscious motives and drives. Some names that are associated are Freud and Erikson. There's a heavy emphasis on nature, and in the early years is very important. Jeez. And I spell checked this too. Behavioral learning, that would have been Pavlov, Skinner, and Watson. Behaviorism and learning, Pavlov, Skinner, Watson. Classical conditioning, Pavlov, learning by association. The neutral stimulus becomes the conditioned stimulus. That was Pavlov and the dogs. Operant conditioning was Skinner, B.F. Skinner. Behavior is shaped and maintained by its consequences. That's operating conditioning. And observational learning or social learning, this was Bandura. We learn by watching and imitating others. Cognitive theory, Jean Piaget. The way people think and understand a world shapes their perceptions, actions, and attitudes. There are 4 stages to this theory of cognitive development. The sensorimotor, the pre-operational, concrete operations, and formal operations. Remember, that was Piaget. Sociocultural theory, human development cannot be studied apart from the culture. Children are apprentices who learn from more skilled members of society. Guided participation, the tutor engages the learner in joint activities, providing direct instruction and direct involvement in learning. and scaffolding, breaking down a large task into smaller, more manageable steps. Epigenetic theory, Darwin, emphasizes the interaction between genes and the environment, incorporates natural sciences, each person born with genetic possibilities. Genes affect every aspect of behavior. Eclectic perspective, approach taken by most developmentalists in which they apply aspects of each of the various theories rather than staying with just one. What theories can contribute? The psychoanalytic theory has made us aware of importance of early childhood experiences. Behaviorism has shown effect of immediate environment on learning. The cognitive theory helps us understand how intellectual process and thinking affects actions. The sociocultural theory has reminded us that development is embedded in a rich and multifaceted context. And the epigenetic theory emphasizes interactions between inherited forces in immediate contexts. Moving now into more of the contraception, the gamete. That's a reproductive cell that directs the process by which genetic information is combined and transmitted. The father gamete is the sperm, the mother gamete is the ovum. The gametes fuse to become a zygote. Genotype, the genetic information from the 46 chromosomes, 23 from the male and 23 from the female. So the genotype is the genetic information. Genes. Genes are made up of DNA, the complex protein code of genetic information. So genes are made up of DNA. Chromosomes are molecules of DNA forming 23 sets of chromosomes for a total of 46 chromosomes. So chromosomes are molecules of DNA. Sex differentiation is determined by the Y chromosome from the male only. Monozygotic twins are identical twins, or quadruplets originate from one zygote that splits in half. Dizygotic twins, they come from two separate zygotes. There's two ova, and they're fertilized by two sperm. Stem cells. Stem cells are present in the first stages of human development, cells from which any other specialized type of cell can form. An additive gene is one of a number of genes affecting a specific trait, averaged together, such as skin color, hair curliness, and height. Dominant and recessive genes, or another way of saying that is the dominant recessive pattern. The gene showing the most influence, or the most powerful, is referred to as dominant, and the least influence is recessive. Examples would be blood type, eye color, the ability to curl your tongue, or hair color. Genotype versus phenotype. The genotype is the sum total of all the genes a person inherits. A phenotype is the actual appearance and behavior, expressed traits. We are all carriers of unexpressed genes that can be passed through the sperm or ova. An example of that would be cystic fibrosis. Almost done here. Down syndrome. There's three chromosomes on gene 21 called trisomy 21. 300 different characteristics that result from the extra chromosome. The older the mother is at birth, the higher the rate of Down syndrome. Fetal alcohol syndrome is a cluster of birth defects, including abnormal facial characteristics, slow physical growth, and retarded mental development that may occur in the child of a woman who drinks alcohol while pregnant. Judith Rich Harris. Harris' most innovative idea was to look outside the family and to point at the peer group as an important shaper of the child's psyche. Harris did not claim that parents don't matter. Harris pointed out that parents have a role in selecting their children's peer group, especially in the early years. 3 stages of pregnancy. You have the germinal period, the embryonic period, and the fetal period. The germinal period is the first 14 days. The zygote divides, forms a nucleus in a shell, which will be the placenta, and then nucleus and shell, which will be a placenta. Hopefully this will embed in the uterus. When it is at 8 cells, differentiation begins, and differentiation is early stem cells take on distinct characteristics and gravitate to locations foreshadowing the type of cells that they will become. The embryonic period is 3rd through the 8 weeks. The first sign of human structure, neural tube forms that become the CNS, the brain and the spine, arm buds and leg buds, all basic organs present except the sex organs. And the fetal period is 9th week through birth. It's called a fetus from 9 weeks on. The head, the extremities, the sex organs, they all form. The cephalocaudal pattern, that means development from head to tail, that develops first. Then the proximodistal pattern, extremities form secondly. Age of viability, age at which preterm baby can possibly survive. It's 22 weeks. The APGAR score, the newborn's first minutes, assessment done at 1 minute and 5 minutes after birth. They get 2 points for each of these categories: heart rate, breathing, color, muscle tone, and reflexes. Score a 7 or better is normal. Under 7, they need help breathing. Under 4, they need critical medical care. Anoxia is a lack of oxygen. Folic acid, a lack of this in mother's diet can cause neural tube defects. Postpartum depression, feelings of inadequacy and sadness experienced by 10 to 20% of women in days and weeks after birth. It can be hormonal, it can be mild to severe. A teratogen is a broad range of substances that can cause environmental insults that may cause prenatal abnormalities or later learning disabilities. In prenatal development, there are critical periods when a particular organ or other body part is most susceptible to teratogenic damage. The entire embryonic period is critical because most of the major body systems are developing then. Threshold effect. Teratogen relatively harmless until exposure reaches a certain level, and that's that threshold. Different types of teratogens, or teratogens, however you say it. You can have your diseases such as rubella, German measles, toxoplasmosis, which is cat feces, measles, chickenpox, influenza, syphilis, AIDS, gonorrhea, chlamydia. Then you got your pollutants such as lead, mercury, pesticides, herbicides. Then you got radiation, repeated exposure to X-rays. Social and behavior factors, very high stress, malnutrition, excessive exhaustive exercise. Then you have your medicinal drugs such as lithium, tetracycline, streptomycin, ACE inhibitors, phenobarbital, thalidomide. And finally, your psychoactive drugs such as caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, heroin, cocaine, and inhaled solvents. And that's everything from the study guide. So listen to that a few times and read your test and go back and make your spelling checks and all will be fine.